All right, we are going live, everybody. Hello, welcome to the program. I am the original gamer, Stevie Stroh, and I'm very pleased to be sharing with you the screen and the mind and the talent of Tim Lindner, who's with us. Hello, Tim. How are you?
Very good, Steve. Good to be here.
And it's great to have you here. It's great to have up what's on our screen, what we have here. So I'll just kick it off real quick by explaining what we're going to talk about. I'm going to introduce you. I would love for you to give us a little short backstory on all the cool things you've done with the color computer leading up to what we're going to talk about today, which is the Speech Sound Pack. So everybody, this is Tim Lindner, and we're going to talk about the Speech Sound Pack that is now emulated in MAME, so you can play it at home and not have to have the real hardware. And it's nothing short of an amazing achievement. And other than that, we're going to let Tim take it away. So Tim, you have the floor.
Hello everybody. Good to be here. As a background, I've been, I got my first CoCo in 1980, 4K, great little thing. My dad was an accountant, and his shop was near the Radio Shack at the small town we grew up in, so it was a natural fit for me to get that. Um, throughout the 80s, throughout the 80s, 90s, I used the CoCo pretty much exclusively. And As far as my projects, never really wrote any commercial software or did any commercial hardware. It was just after I got a bit older and my kids got a bit older, I started tinkering with the MES emulator and eventually wrote the 6309 core for that. Then I started getting into disk imaging and did the DMK format support for MES, so that we could play copy-protected games. I became friends with Boise, got into Toolshed and the Nitrous 9 project. Wrote the dcheck command for Toolshed. That was a lot of fun. But throughout all these years, I've always loved the little Speech Sound Pack and Speech Sound Cartridge, and have always wanted to emulate it. I've been gathering information all this time, and just a couple weeks ago, finally finished it up and pushed it out.
And I can't thank you enough for doing that. And I was a huge fan of this. I have now two of them that I've been able to get off of eBay, and they both work. And it's a great thing. It brought something to our color computer that it didn't have, which was real music, which we didn't have a music synthesizer, so to speak. So 3-voice music, a channel of sound and white noise, and then the bonus. You may look at it as bonus as having, as John Laurie in the live chat now says, it says now the CoCo can do a spot-on Stephen Hawking impression emulated. So it is a voice synthesizer, which was a big thing in the 80s, and I find it sometimes a little bit annoying now hearing the voice, but I love hearing the music. And it's something that not everybody could have because it was expensive to own. It required a multi-pack interface as well. And probably for some of those same reasons, it wasn't as heavily developed for, and I don't think it saw the full potential of what it could have had. But it's a great piece of our history. Randy Kindig has just joined us too, of Floppy Days podcast and the Trash Talkers and Tandy Assembly. Hi, Randy, how are you? So yeah, it's great that we have it now, and I can't wait to hear all about it, and I can't wait for everybody to hear it as well. And yeah, it's a very interesting history, Tim, because I didn't realize as much things that you have done, because I first heard your name on the podcast when they were talking about the program pack reproduction boxes that you produced, which are now being used by John Strong and John Linville and things like that. So that's when I first heard your name, and that's what I kind of knew you for initially when I met you at CoCo Fest. But the more I dig into CoCo, the more your name shows up. Like in the Dungeons of Daggereth PC port, there's different copies of the recordings of all the sounds, and there's a Tim Lindner audio library that's in there. And like as you're mentioning, you've been involved in the MAME and MES and emulations in OS 9. It's pretty impressive, a lot of things that you've done. And I'm definitely grateful for the fruits of these labors, especially now that we have this speech and sound pack here that we're looking at, which is, it's a cool thing, and I can't wait for everybody to hear it.
Well, why don't we just start right in?
Just do it.
Yeah.
Jump in.
All right. So bringing out my favorite emulator. And there we go. Full screen. So of course, to start off with, you just load up the demo disk that I put together and start running some of the programs on it, and we can have it introduce itself.
Hello.
One of the things I like to do, because I'm doing a lot of testing, is I have a little program here that needs to run in all RAM mode that monitors the SSC status bits. And you'll see the little orange box up in the top right-hand corner.
Okay.
And so that's monitoring. So that box will change when it it changes as the status bits go. There's a status bit for speaking, there's a status bit for making sound, and then there's a busy bit so that you don't bother the device when it is running. Of course, we can also look at the sound effects.
Please.
These are programs from the manual.
The whistle, yeah. See, I saw the cursor change color.
Yeah.
It's so clear too. The sound emulation is so clear.
Oh, and in fact, there's a project going on with the sound chip. They're making it better. They're going to be gathering up a bunch of different variations of the chip and extending the emulation a bit. But it's important to talk about the sound chip a little bit, because as you know, without a sound chip, the color computer has to direct the waveforms of the speaker constantly. The faster it does it, the better it'll sound, and that takes away from CPU execution, from game logic and displaying graphics and stuff like that. But with the sound chip, you're able to just give a frequency to the PSG, and it will produce the tone from start to finish at 44K.
Which is cool stuff.
And then all you have to do is change the frequency over time, and you don't have to pump out the waveforms.
Yeah, that's cool. Ron Klein joined the text chat. Hey, Ron, call back into Skype. Ron was asking the question about, is this on a real CoCo, because he can hear the floppy drive spinning and grinding right now. Can you explain to us how that's happening right now? Because I don't think I've got that on the build that Ron compiled for me either.
I noticed this a few weeks ago. The floppy chip emulation now includes sound effects.
So this is on the full build of MAME with MAME and MES and everything else?
No, this is not the full build. This is just the CoCo thing. But
okay.
It's a pretty good emulation of what
it is.
floppy drive sounds like.
Ron says no way.
Yeah.
Ron, call back in when you get your headset going. I want Ron Klein on the call here. So that's impressive.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It was a lot of effort.
Let's hear some more sound. Let's hear the race car and a few other things. Unless you got more to show us. Yeah, I want to hear it all. Oh, pardon me. I just had gas.
No, that was the floppy drive.
Woo! Gunshot.
First explosion. Here's a long one.
Oh.
Yep. And another thing I want to do is.
Ron, you need to call CoCo Talk now. Don't call me, because it doesn't look like I can add you into the call. But you should be in the CoCo Talk group too, Ron. Oh man, listen to that drive. Yeah, this is it. This is the epitome of the speech and sound pack. This is the single game that I've been able to find that really has constant music, multi-voice music, and sound effects. The great Steve Bjork classic. Okay, and are you doing the no? It's running very fast right now.
Right. I turned off the throttle.
Okay.
Now I'm trying to remember how to do the PC joystick. Num0, B0. There we go.
Do.
I don't have a joystick hooked up, so I can't.
No, that's fine. We can just hear it and enjoy it.
Of course, you only need to hear the first 15 seconds because it repeats incessantly. And just imagine that over and over again.
Yes. But it was definitely a crowning achievement. How can we get Ron Klein into this call right now? Ron's trying to call in. Yeah, that is absolutely impressive that we're able to do that. I am such a huge fan. I'm trying to call, but when I call, it just disconnects, he says.
I'd like to take care of some misconceptions that have been espoused about this device.
About the speech sound pack?
Yeah.
Please do.
About how it's hard to program for or gets in your way. I don't think any of that's true.
Okay.
For music generation, the speech sound pack has a mode that lets you talk directly to the PSG, the programmable sound direct, and it completely gets out of your way, and you're able to send the address and data commands directly to the PSG with very little latency. And if you want to do speech, of course, you have to get out of that mode. But then sending text to the data is pretty quick. Of course, if you send text to the machine, it has to convert it to phonemes, and that takes time. But there's a mode where you can send phonemes directly, and so there's no latency there, and just start speaking. So I think the device is a lot more capable than people give it credit for.
Okay. Well, that's definitely good to hear. And maybe now that it's able to be emulated, maybe some newer titles can be developed for it and take advantage of the fact that everybody pretty much has access to this piece of hardware via MAME.
Yep.
Yes, and I think it's a great thing to have. As one who's been promoting sound and bemoaning the fact that Sound Speech Pack's not available for everybody, and I'll have to look into those other modes.
Yeah,
As one who has supported different orchestra 90 and didn't do the Sound Speech Pack, primarily, first issue there was cost, and it's like, okay, people aren't going to have it, so it's going to limit to what, my market to it.
Right.
Now it's available in the emulator. It's a great thing. And again, to everybody who helped make this possible, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
On my initial postings, I listed off the 5 people who greatly helped with this, because this was certainly not a one-man thing. There are bits and pieces of this made by a bunch of people, and I just brought everything together.
Okay.
But still, that's great to have someone who brings it together, because I know parts of those bits and pieces have been around for quite some time, and having somebody that champions the idea and to get all those together and stuff is a great thing.
I especially want to thank Nathan Woods for he's the main maintainer of the CoCo drivers in MAME, and he's been doing a great job. He took a break for a while because he has kids, but somehow he's finding the time now and putting a lot of work into the emulator.
That's awesome. Richard is asking, could you please clarify what is the hardware inside the pack and how does MAME emulate it?
Okay, inside the pack there's a microcontroller, which runs a program, a 4K program, that takes in data from the color computer, parses it, and makes sound. The microcontroller, I wish I had picture of the board. The microcontroller is a Texas Instruments part, and I'm drawing a blank here. The programmable sound generator is an AY8910. The speech device is called a narrator from General Instruments, and all of the information is in this manual right here.
Okay.
And I have it up on the website, and it's on the Color Computer Archive, and you can download it and learn how to program this device.
That's cool.
I don't
That's
think it's
very
appropriate
cool.
now to. I mean, how much detail would you like me to get into?
I mean, as much as you want to get into this, we're talking about this device. I mean, we can talk about I'll tell you what I think I understand about it. I didn't understand any of the hardware initially from the 80s and stuff like that. When I first got back into the CoCo via emulations about 2 years ago, the only emulator I knew about at the time that I was actually able to get work was VCC. And then I was asking around, and I'm like, well, how come this hasn't been emulated? Is it possible to emulate this? And I didn't understand why at the time. But the more I've listened to like the podcasts and hearing other things, which you kind of just dispelled some of these maybe not necessarily completely true statements. But my understanding was the main thing that made this, let's just call it, different than a straight up sound chip it was this microcontroller, this PIC that was kind of in between, the interface between the CoCo and the sound producing stuff. And I have heard from and I think Simon Jonason, who is does a lot of really impressive stuff with sound and mod players and things like that, sample waveform generation. I think he tried to mess with it and said that it was a little bit of a pain in the arse. And then John Linville, also, who's very technically capable, said, yeah, well, this thing is a little bit of a pain, but maybe it's just knowing the right path to take.
Right.
And is this path documented, or these modes documented? But it wasn't just a chip, right? Because if it was just the sound chips have been emulated in MAME for 15 years already. It was a little bit more than that. There's a few more pieces to kind of bring it all together. And what was the hardest one? Was it that microcontroller? Was that kind of the most difficult thing to make act as the control interface for all this stuff, or whatever the term is?
I would say yes. The microcontroller was the hardest part, because it was not in MAME when I started, and the people who did the AY chip, the programmable sound generator, had already completed their work, and Joe Zabicek, who did all the reverse engineering on the speech narrator, had completed all of his work as well. So, and the biggest problem with the microcontroller was the ROM that was inside of it. There are no pins to read out the ROM on the microcontroller. It's completely internal, and it also contains its own RAM. So without any pins to poke at to get access to the ROM, we had to do something a little tricky.
And what was that?
Well, it's called Trojaning. There's a pin on the microcontroller where it can act like a more generic CPU, where you can hook ROM up to it. Okay. But when you do that, the internal ROM disappears and is invisible. So you've got a little, you made a little step, but you got a big problem. So the solution was then to hook up a ROM to the device. Oh, we had to take the microcontroller out of the speech sound pack. We had to hook it up to our own little board. But the solution,
so an actual card was sacrificed for the greater good.
Yes, it was. Okay. And the pin was pulled to turn it into a more generic microcontroller. And the program was run that we wrote. And what it did is copied itself to the 128 bytes of RAM that are available, and then wait for the microcontroller mode to be turned off, which would allow it to see the internal ROM again. When that happened, it started pushing out the ROM 1 bit at a time through one of the data ports on the microcontroller. And that's how we got a copy of the ROM.
Wow.
Yep.
You basically had to siphon the data out of it.
We had to create a running program, and the data manual did not say what would happen if you tried to change this pin from microprocessor mode to microcontroller mode.
Okay.
It could conceivably have reset itself, and then cleared out all the RAM, and our program would have been gone, and it would have done its normal boot up. But fortunately, it didn't. It just continued on as if nothing was happening, except we could see the ROM now.
Impressive.
And I'd like to thank Frank Palazzolo for that work. He is a very experienced hardware engineer.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So the microcontroller that you removed, is it still functional? Could it be like reattached to the speech sound pack and put back into its original
Yes, it could.
role? Okay. So that's cool. That is very cool. I mean, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and that to me that just makes it even the more amazing that it's finally done. And you've been working on this for like how many years before you could get that final piece of the puzzle done?
I've been working on it for about 10 years.
Wow.
But
Talk about commitment.
Not constantly.
Not nonstop, but still, that's commitment. That's commitment and dedication, and it definitely paid off. I made this comment on Facebook because I'm blown away by this. And then when I saw you post that you had done this, and then when I see somebody come back and just say, well, does that mean we can get this in VCC? I haven't been working on this for 10 years, but to me it almost sounds like, well, how about we smell the roses and let's say thank you for what we got here, and let's baby step our way to something else. But I guess it is a valid question, and I'm sure nobody meant any disrespect by trying to diminish the magnitude of this. But
I decided not to respond to that email, but I'm going to now. I took a look at all the code for the bits of the speech sound pack, and it's all what's called BSD 3-clause license, which is a very permissive license. To use this code in other projects, all you need to do is mention where the code came from. You don't have to give anything back. You don't have to give up your firstborn. You just have to mention where it came from, and the MESS project and these people who worked on it.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I have a question that comes to mind, and are the parts still available for? Otherwise, should a clone be made of the Sound Speech Pack?
Well, the microcontroller was never made available. It was a very proprietary part, only sold to Radio Shack to create this device.
Okay.
But the programmable sound generator, the RAM, and the speech narrator, I believe those are all new old stock. I don't know if any of those are still available.
Those are actually very rare to find, and Radio Shack used to sell those long ago, but it's the old Vox boxes, if you ever heard of those, have been they've been selling on eBay, and a lot of people have bought those to gut the chips out of them, and they've been going for about $100 and higher.
Oh my!
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, it seems like Ron Klein's not able to join this group call. And I don't know if it's because he's running Skype on Linux and it's not up to date to support the multi-party chat or something like that. So Ron's been texting us and stuff, but I can't get him to join. I really would like to have Ron on here too, because I know Ron has been involved with MAME and the CoCo as well, and Ron Klein is the one who's put together the Raspberry Pi CoCo image for us. And I know you and Ron had some kind of collaboration and testing this on the Raspberry Pi, and the conversation I had with Ron yesterday was that it's working, but he is hearing a little bit of feedback that he's trying to figure out on it.
That's what I understand too. I need to get myself a Raspberry Pi and take a look at this in in closer detail. You just can't look into these with it when you don't have the hardware.
Yeah, I'm gonna order one. You know what? I might order one for you too as a thank you gift. So
No, that's
I'll get your.
completely unnecessary.
Well, and it's okay. If I'm gonna order one, I'll order two. I get free Amazon shipping. So.
And I think there's a question that a lot of us wanting is, okay, when and how do we get this?
Well, a build has been made available. There's a link on Facebook. And this is a great way to segue to learning how to compile your own version of MAME.
Yeah.
Something I wanted to talk about.
Well, I'm ready to listen. I'll dig up that link and I'll post it in the chat too.
Right.
I got lucky because Ron Klein compiled one for me and sent me an executable of just the mess portion of this that works.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'll find that link in Facebook while you're getting ready to start your discussion on compiling.
Yeah, if everybody's up for it, I'd like to talk about compiling, and I'd like to talk about some of the options that I use while using MAME to make it easier and more fun. Of course, it all starts with a Google search, compiling MAME, and it comes to this page right here on the mamedev.org, and it talks about some of the details. But it also should take you to the page where you can download. Oh, here it is. The MAME's tool site. MAME has put together a MinGW package for building MAME. And there's two downloadables, one for Windows 64-bit and one for Windows 32-bit. And those are self-extracting archives. When you get it downloaded, you turn on some options here that are clearly labeled. And then you clone the repository from MameDev with this command. And we go into it. And the one thing that I wanted to mention was a trick to make this build as fast as possible. And it's this file called useroptions.make.
Now, you are showing us a Linux machine right now?
No, this is a Windows.
Oh, I'm just not used to seeing the permissions listed out that way.
Well, in the MinGW environment, it looks very Unixy.
Okay.
So this line right here, sources equals. You'll notice that I have the CoCo 1 and 2 driver and the CoCo 3 driver listed here. This isn't tiny MAME, but the system will only compile the things it needs for these two drivers. And it takes a 40-minute compile down to a 4-minute compile.
Wow.
Yeah. This is the biggest secret that I think more people should know about. You don't have to spend 40 to 60 minutes compiling MAME if you don't want to.
Okay.
Is there I know we've got it on the video now, but is there a document that we can reference for all this?
Well, you have to remember this is all for programmers, and the make file itself is self-documenting. So once you get that file ready, it's as simple as going into your MAME directory that you've downloaded it using Git and just typing make. And it starts.
Okay, and I apologize. I've been trying to switch between screens and copy and paste in all your links to it, so I wasn't able to completely focus on everything that you showed me here, but I'll watch it in the replay. So now you're actually making the compilation.
Right. It's not going to be doing very much because I had made previously and nothing has been modified. So it just goes through the motions of checking and looking for things that have been modified.
So here's my dumb question: if you want, when you're compiling MAME, the link you just showed us, does that give you the actual compiler too, or do you need to get a particular compiler, or is it part of that MAME dev website?
The link downloads the compiler and the environment to compile under.
Okay. Is it written in its own language, or is it in a common language like C or C++ or something like that?
It is an executable ready to go.
No, I mean, but the things you're compiling when you're compiling MAME, what are these different things written in as they're being compiled?
Oh, MAME is a C++ program.
C++, okay.
And the directions on these pages show you what to type in after you download and start.
Okay, and this is mamedev.org/tools.
Yeah.
I'll put that in the chat too. Mamedev. Okay. mamedev.com/tools. Okay.
So my whole point of this is how easy it is to compile and stay updated with the latest.
Yeah, I appreciate it because, I just have so many projects, digging the right information up, takes time, and so I just avoid it because, I get other projects.
The next thing I want to talk about in using MAME is the MAME configuration file. You create it with the command MAME, and you use the CC for create config, and it creates a file called MAME-ini that contains all the default configuration.
Okay. And these are things you could ordinarily pass off with the command parameters, like dash home path for this.
Yeah. Things I like to change are the window. The window command. It defaults to full screen, and I like to have a window. Another thing I like to change is the filter command. I don't like the filter. It makes it blurry for me. I like nice rectangular square blocks.
Okay.
And another thing I like to do is skip game info.
Skip what now?
Skip game info.
Oh, yeah, when you get that little introduction screen that tells you all about it.
Yeah. I like to turn that on so that it doesn't do that anymore.
So then it just takes you straight to the green screen.
Takes you straight to it.
And if you had a floppy you always wanted to use, you could mount that floppy here too.
Yep.
Specify your floppy locations.
Yes, you could. So then we start getting into MAME, and of course the command I use to start with the full speech sound pack there. I could describe that. The DAX ext is the expansion port, and we're telling it to put in the multipack. And then
does the multipack need to be specified as a ROM file or anything else, any other library or extra thing we need to have in our MAME ROMs folder for that to work, or is that emulated built in?
That's built in. There's no ROMs in the multipack, so it's all hardware.
It's just a bus extension, basically.
And then you'll see my next command, ext:/multi:/slot3 space SSC, is how you tell the emulator to insert the speech sound pack into the slot.
And that is a zip file that needs to be put in the ROMs folder, and I've also pasted that link in there too. So the actual SSC cartridge has now been zipped up, and so all of the supporting hardware for that is a single zip file that goes in your ROMs folder with your CoCo ROMs and things like that, right?
Technically, the speech sound pack contains two different ROMs, one inside the microcontroller and one inside the speech narrator. And so I had to zip them up in order to, keep them unified. Now, one thing I definitely want to show is the debugger.
That's neat.
I would love more people to know about the debugger.
I just saw that yesterday when Ron Klein showed it to me. It's cool.
So here we see I started the CoCo 2 emulation, and I used the -debug command line flag to start the debugger. It starts right here at A027, which is an address we should all know because it's the reset address. So this is the first address executed by the CoCo. The G command will let it continue to run.
Okay, and I just noticed too, like when you turn off that filter, the fonts look a little bit less blurry now too.
Yes, that's what I was alluding to. Something I'm a fan of.
Okay.
So to stop the debugger, you hit the backtick key, and it stops the emulation and starts the debugger so that you can type in commands. One command we could type in is a breakpoint. I actually wanted to show something else on that. I wanted to show the speech sound pack. I need to add the debug command to that. Okay. So now we have the debugger that came up with, and the speech sound pack is loaded up, and I wanted to first ignore the main CPU, the CPU number 0. And now I wanted to set a breakpoint for...
When you say the main CPU, you're talking about the 6809 and the CoCo?
That's right.
Okay.
I'm going to be setting a breakpoint in the microcontroller inside the speech sound pack.
Yeah, the fonts look a heck of a lot better now without that filter. I love that floppy sound.
So I set up a breakpoint to break at the microcontroller's interrupt for receiving data. So as soon as it receives data, it will stop. And we can see that the microcontroller stops at address FO12. And this is the interrupt handler for receiving data from the color computer. If we let it run till this command right here, the move P-P4, A. P4 is the peripheral that can read input from the data bus. And if we skip past it, we can see that register A received the H in hello. But we can't actually see it because the register A is actually in memory. It's not a real register like the 6809 has. Register A is the first memory location at 0, and 48, of course, I believe is capital H. So we just saw it read in the first character from the color computer.
Oh, because that's hex, not decimal. I was going to say, yeah, in decimal that's not true, but yeah, never mind.
So that's,
yeah. So this is a real-time RAM monitoring right now.
Yeah, this is real-time RAM monitoring.
So this is like the equivalent of like the old back in the days of DOS. You could get a hex editor and like scan through a floppy and look at things that were stored in code and on disk format. You're now looking at live RAM. Mm-hmm. What's in RAM?
Right. And if I set the go, we'll then stop again at the E and the L and the L and the O and the return. And now we see it running in real time. Not only do we see the disassembly of the PC register, but we also see the RAM updating in real time as well.
Wow. And because this is being emulated, the fact that it's doing this extra scrolling of data, it's not really slowing down the actual virtual CoCo machine at all, right?
Yeah, it does slow down the CoCo machine. If you have a PC that can't handle it, you'll see quite a slowdown.
Oh, it does. Okay. Yeah, this is really impressive, you know, and there's always kind of this ongoing discussion / debate about the various emulators, and I know everybody has their favorite, and you know, I don't try to take sides. I don't try to disparage one or overly inflate another. I have actually been using VCC quite a lot just because it has worked for me. Initially, I didn't understand how to get MAME to run a CoCo, but then I figured out how to put the CoCo ROMs in there and make it work. It's still not super glamorous and elegant for launching your game titles out of the box. You know, it needs tweaking and these things like this. So this is not I would say the most elegant way to do things, but when you look at the features and the things you have, it's really impressive what you can do with MAME.
Oh, absolutely.
And I don't think anybody can deny that when it comes to its actual job as an emulator, it is probably the single best emulator for the CoCo, both in compatibility and how it does artifacting and everything else. And then you throw in all these other features here, like the debugging and the RAM monitoring, and now the speech sound pack. I think if anybody maybe who was on the fence of using MAME, or maybe just didn't feel a compelling reason to try MAME, maybe this will inspire a few people to give it a shot, because it's pretty cool.
Well, personally, I think everybody should have copies of all the emulators. XRoar is another great CoCo 2 and Dragon emulator.
Definitely.
My main machine is a Mac, so I'm more limited than most people.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I wanted to show, the last thing I wanted to show about the debugger was watchpoints, which are super cool. For instance, we can do a watch point at address 400 for one address, and we can look for writes, and if the write is hex 80, we can have it break into the debugger no matter where it was written from. So we all know that address 400 is the top of the screen, and I thought I had that set up right. I guess I didn't.
Now, apparently there's a little bit of a syntax you need to understand to know how to set these watch points and stuff, right?
Yeah, maybe OX80. Well, it does work. I did test it earlier. I'm not quite sure what the problem is with my syntax. But watch points are another powerful feature for use in the MAME debugger.
Drencor is asking a question here. It says, how hard would it be, Drencor is David Ladd. Okay, so how hard would it be to add SDF disk image support to the disk drive emulation so a person could share SDF images between the CoCo SDC and MAME?
Well, I saw a message, I think it was him, posted a few weeks ago on Facebook. And I implemented read support for SDF last week. And it was incorporated after the last release, so it's going to be the June release when it finally hits the official distributions.
Okay.
And I'm working on write support as well, read-write support, so that the information that you change will be written back to the SDF drive.
That's cool. That's cool. And then Curtis Boyle has a question. He says, can you ask if there is an easy way in the MAME debugger to tell it to set a breakpoint for only one of the task registers, i.e. the user process versus the system process in Nitrous 9?
Right. So as you know, there are two different sets of task registers that are assigned to the same 8 addresses. What you would have to do there is trigger off an internal state to the emulated gimme, because of course there's no way to know which, at least I don't think the task register switch is readable. If we look at the help for WP set, we can see that we can write functions that get executed at every iteration. And I think it would be possible to trigger off the internal data of the emulated gimme and write the write of a certain value. But I would have to look into that and figure out the syntax. I'll have to get back to him on that one.
Okay.
I think maybe.
Richard Cavell has to leave us, but he says, gotta go, guys. Kudos for implementing the pack all the way from the UK. Thank you, Richard, for being here.
One of the nice things about emulating the pack in MAME is they can attach it on their Dragon. Yeah.
Was there official Dragon support for this on a real Dragon?
The color computer and the Dragon have the exact same cartridge expansion port. So you could conceivably plug one into the Dragon in real life, but I don't believe they were sold in England. That would be it would be an import item.
Right, because Dragon wasn't a Tandy product. Now, is the Dragon compatible with the Multipack as well?
I don't see why not.
Interesting.
It would all be based on whether that the software switch was already being used in the Dragon hardware.
Mm-hmm.
To my knowledge, it's not. You might have, on the 10.0, the 64, it's copied in a RAM mode. You might have some conflicts possibly there, but you shouldn't have, running in a standard 32K mode. You may not have in the other mode. That's just the only thing that I could think that would do that. We would have to check where the hardware ports on the parallel port and the hardware serial port are addressed, but I don't think those are conflicts. But I would actually have to check those addresses. But other than that, that's the differences in hardware is those, the hardware parallel and serial port. And if those don't conflict, then there shouldn't be any reason why a multi-pack would not run. You might have some physical spacing, and as far as the height on the cartridge port, it might be different on the Dragon. So you may have an issue there. But off the top of my head, those are the only things I would see that would cause any problems.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing I wanted to talk about is Eric Gravelux, a fork of MAME.
Okay.
He's a longtime color computer developer. He's most known for working on ColorMax, which he has on his GitHub page. But his fork of MAME has some wonderful features for programmers.
Okay.
Some ways of getting the timing information from the emulator. And another thing is the break. This is great. The break opcode. As you know, every opcode isn't used in the 6809, and so we decided to use one that, when it's hit, will break into the debugger. So this is really helpful when you're writing new code and you're trying to figure out what is going on, and you need to break at an exact address. And this will allow you to do it. So his fork is very helpful and very much appreciated.
Okay, so the fact that this MAME, you have the ability to compile this MAME, does that mean it's PC, Mac, and Linux can take the same source code and compile it for their system?
Yes. Well, there are 3 different front ends. Well, actually, 2 different front ends for MAME that are built into the system that you get from the official MAME website. There's a Windows port that uses Windows APIs to draw the windows and draw the emulation. And then there's an SDL port, which uses the SDL framework for all of its GUI and mouse and keyboard stuff. And on OS 10 and on Linux, we use the SDL port. And on Windows, they mainly use the native window port.
Okay, because I see a few questions in here asking about, well, can I only run this on the PC? But I don't think that's necessarily true, right?
No, unofficial binaries and official binaries are released for Mac OS 10 and Linux.
Okay.
And this is Ron. I just wanted to add something.
Hey, Ron.
How you doing, Tim?
Good.
Thanks for this demo. This is really good. I like the information on the debugger. Eric was nice enough. I did find his port about a month and a half ago, and it was not compiling correctly under Linux, and he made some changes to that. So for people that are going to use this under Linux, it does work now.
Cool.
For somebody like me who's not a serious programmer and is not as familiar with things like GitHubs and things like this, can you dumb down the whole concept of what it means to be a fork of something. So, there's the normal MAME release and the normal MAME distribution that gets updated on MAME.org that everybody can access. But if somebody's taking a fork, they're basically making a branch off of the tree and taking a certain version and making a new kind of custom strain of that version of the code.
Yeah, that's actually a very good description of what's happening. Because MAME has a very permissive license, there's nothing stopping people from taking the source code and using it to their own ends. Of course, the MAME the name MAME is trademarked, and they don't let you use it in commercial situations, and they don't let you use it for your own purposes. But the code is there.
Okay. David Ladd is asking, can one just use the SDL port on a Windows system?
Yes, that is supported. The SDL library, it stands for the Simple Dynamic Media Layer, by the way. And it's just a set of APIs for opening up windows and drawing into them. And also another set of APIs for getting keyboard and mouse input. And it's a way of bypassing the operating system when you don't want to write directly to Windows. But yes, the SDL port is also available under Windows. You can install the library, compile it, and run it.
Okay. Curtis Boyle says that break command reminds me of the way debuggers worked natively on the 6809, except they used software interrupts for the same thing. I think this was probably in reference to us talking about the fork and the permissive license, but John Linville says, shh, you're going to scare the open source haters in the community. And then Nick says, MAME is too hard for the general user. Mess UI gives you the graphical user interface that makes it far easier to, I guess, navigate some of the things.
Yeah, is he talking about the UI that Barry Nelson did?
I'm not sure. I know there's always been a third-party MAME UI and Mess UI that kind of gives you like a Windows Explorer view of all your installed ROMs and emulations and stuff, and it makes it makes you not have to deal directly with the MAME GUI, especially in the days before MAME had a GUI. When MAME was only CLI, this MAME UI and Mess UI has been around for a very long time, and it kind of just looks like a Finder window or a Windows Explorer window, and it shows you all your ROMs and all your systems. You can just double-click one of them, and it launches it for you. And when you exit out of MAME, it returns you right back to the GUI. So it's kind of like a front-end loader for MAME.
No.
And it also has a few more nicer features too, where you can add some post-processing filters to MAME, where you can have, simulate RGB effects and scanline effects and things like that. I've messed around with that. I'm much more accustomed when I do my old arcade games. I've got an old version of MAME that runs off of that MAME UI, and that's how I pull up all my arcade games to play and stuff. But yeah, I mean, that is another option. But I do think that the way MAME's GUI it's come a long way. The thing that I find to be a little bit of a pain in the arse with the MAME's GUI is, like, if I just want to load up a file, I would prefer to have the operating system dialog come up for file searching, because the MAME GUI is a very long, stretched out graphical version of navigating my file structure that's less productive, I feel, like this here.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes. I completely know what you mean. This is weird. And yes, it shows you the dot files. It shows you everything. And you were talking about this page right here. Select access mode.
Yeah, I know why I have that problem. The disk image that I chose was a DMK disk image.
Uh-huh.
And I guess that DMK is not write compatible with MAME.
Right. I was looking into that when I was implementing SDF. SDF and DMK are very similar. And write support for DMK has not been implemented.
Ron Klein helped me figure out a workaround. What we did is we opened up my floppy. I created a new floppy in drive 1, formatted that, and just did a backup of one to the other. So now I have a JVC formatted floppy disk that is now going to hopefully be CoCo SDC compatible. So I learned something in the process. I'm getting a little bit more techie here.
I want to add some. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Tim.
I just wanted to mention that this is what MAME developers call the UI, the built-in user interface.
Yes.
It's gotten
And
through
it
by the
doesn't
tab
suck.
menu.
It doesn't suck. It's just not uber elegant.
Nope.
Let me just add, though, that, and I agree with what you guys said with the user interface. I'm very familiar with the, at least the Windows port. They used to have an old MAME 32, they used to call it, that had a graphical user interface as well. But what makes this so great is running on the Raspberry Pi. I am not loading X Windows on the Raspberry Pi to launch MAME. So the SDL libraries that are being used are just console based. And
Right, you get direct access to the video hardware.
Right, so there's no graphical user interface or basic dialog boxes it can call. So having this built-in UI is actually very beneficial to the Raspberry Pi, at least for that version.
Yep. And you got me wanting a Raspberry Pi, Ron Klein. Curse you.
Yeah, I have an empty CoCo 3 case that is just itching to have a Raspberry Pi put into it.
Did you get one from? Did you get the 3D printed case from CoCo Fest?
Me?
Yeah.
No, I have a actual CoCo 3.
Oh, a real CoCo 3 case.
CoCo 3 case that I don't have a motherboard for.
So I may be releasing some information early, but for those of you that do have a CoCo case like me, I have a CoCo 3 and an extra keyboard. Christopher Hawks is working on that keyboard interface. It uses a Teensy controller, which will allow you to take a stock CoCo 3 keyboard and hook that to a Raspberry Pi. And if you put that Raspberry Pi in your case, now you can do what he's done with his original CoCo Pi. But I want to do this with a real CoCo 3 case and a real CoCo 3 keyboard. So Chris is working on that right now, and I believe he's building extras and will announce something at some point if people are interested in getting one of those.
That's great news. That's great news. If nobody wants to sacrifice one, but if you happen to have some spare parts, it's a nice. Now you're getting ready to show me how to copy and paste in here too. You're going to be my hero, Tim Lindner, again. How did you paste? What's the command?
Okay, well, everything always starts with the MAME UI, so let's go there and go to Input, User Interface, and we go down to UI Paste Key. UI Paste Text. I have it set for Control Number Delete. Or Control Delete from the numeric keypad is what that means.
Control Delete, okay.
Yeah. So, and it's easy to change. You just hit Return, and that comes up, the two little arrows. Now it's waiting for you to type a key combination. So if I just hit 3 on the keypad, it would say, oh, well, I guess you want me to do it when you hit 3 on the numeric keypad.
Okay.
And you can escape out of this. And now every time you hit 3 on the numeric keypad, you will get...
And because 3 is also got because 3 is a key on itself, that's why you saw the 3 in there.
Right.
Tim, let me ask something. With that, the pasting is great, and it's still faster than most people can type. If you do the no throttle, is it still pretty accurate, or will it screw it up with the paste?
Well, let's give that a try.
Nick Morentas has a question. He says, can the ROM in the speech sound cartridge be reprogrammed?
In emulation or on real hardware? On real hardware, no. It cannot be reprogrammed. It is a masked ROM inside the chip itself.
Okay. Nick, join the call.
So, yeah, numeric pad 3 isn't the best option in this case. I've been
Right.
I believe.
I don't know if you guys can hear the chatter in the background. My younger daughter's got a few friends in the house. I can hear it with my headphones on, so hopefully it's not disturbing anybody. Here's Drencor with a question. He says, Tim Lindner, this may be a crazy question, but can the UI elements be bound to joystick buttons so if someone wanted to? I know you can navigate the menus with the joystick.
I know you can navigate it with the mouse. I've never tried it with the joystick, so I don't know.
I can tell you on the Raspberry Pi, it kind of works. You're right. It's with the mouse, but when I connect up my Bluetooth controller, it looks like it's a mouse when it's outside of when you're just using the UI. You can actually navigate with the controller.
I should also mention that pasting does require the natural keyboard mode. So under keyboard mode, you have to choose natural.
Oh.
And what's the difference?
Well, as you know, when you hit Shift 2 on a CoCo keyboard, you get a quote.
You're right.
But
and on ours, it's an at.
But on a PC keyboard, you get an at. So if you have the emulated keyboard, you would get a quote with Shift 2. If you have a natural keyboard, you would get an at.
Okay. So natural is probably what we want when we're typing from a PC keyboard, so we don't have to think where we're typing.
I don't know if I'm the only one who does this, but I find that when I see this green screen in this font, I normally go to Shift 2 to hit quote.
This old habits, huh?
Oh, yes. Very, very old habits.
Tim, I have a question. With the configuration file that MAME saves when you're in a driver, how do you know what it's going to save when you make these changes and what it won't write out to that file? And is there any way to force, if you've done a nice custom configuration where you select certain things, is there a way to force it to write that config, or is that only on exit?
Well, I do not know if there's a key command that you can use to force to write the config. But let me talk about some of the things that you're talking about, or let me show some of the things that you're talking about. If we go to mame.ini, at the top here, you can see that there's an option to write config, and that will only happen if you have it on 1. So if you change any of these settings while the emulator is running, if you have write config set to 1, it will write it back out. But you were also talking about machine configs.
Correct.
Right, and that's something that a lot of people don't know about. But in here, you can see that there's something called the ini path, and it's currently set to ini and ini presets. So I'm not sure if I have an ini folder, but of course I can make one. Oh, it's already there. And we can look at what I have and nothing. You can create a file here called CoCo.ini. And you can put some of these settings in here, like window, and it will use these settings for the CoCo drivers, and it will not use them for other drivers. This is a great way to, if you use MAME for more than one computer emulation, this is a great way to get specific settings for the different drivers. But I'm not familiar with the mechanisms that write this information out when you finish with MAME, unfortunately.
Oh, and it may do it now that you set that option. If you make some changes in the UI, I notice when I look in my directory, because I've never manually created anything, it's writing stuff out in XML format. And I can see where it remembers the last disk image I chose. It remembers if what directory I was in when I chose it. It writes out a bunch of stuff, but there's other things that you can change within the UI that I notice it does not write out. It's a little obscure to me, so I was just wondering a little more about that.
I'm sorry, I can't be more of help.
Oh no, that's okay. That's what we experiment for.
Yep. You tend to know what you use, that's for sure.
I love the fact that we can copy and paste now too, because if you can come across some code, like that one, one of the things when I've been working on creating my fonts in BASIC, I did my own fonts, but somebody left a comment in one of my videos giving me all the draw data to draw an entire font set, and I'm like, well, that's great, but how am I going to get that into VCC? Well, now I don't have to, right? And I know some people say, well, you could use Toolshed and you can do this and you can do that. And I'm like, dude, I don't have these freaking tools right now. And I'm not like the uber freaking techno hacker that has like 4,000 things to do everything under the sun. I'm just a lazy guy who wants things easy.
Well, yeah, I am the techno hacker, and I think Toolshed is a wonderful set of tools. Boise started that project, and I think it's a great addition to anybody's CoCoing these days.
Yeah, I'll eventually get into that as I get a little bit more techno hacker-ish, but for right now, I want to keep it simple. So the good old-fashioned copy and paste is going to serve me well.
I can see I had an error in my ini file. That's why it didn't do what I thought it would do.
Where did you see that?
Well,
illegal boot values
illegal
equals
boolean,
0?
yeah. Nope.
Oh, okay.
ini/coco.ini. What I wanted to do is I wanted to have a window mode for all my emulators except CoCo. Yeah. So I was I have the CoCo set up for full screen, but if I would run any other emulator, it would pick up the window command from the MAME mini and set it for window mode.
Okay. And that's neat.
Well, that goes through everything I wanted to talk about that I wrote down.
Well, let's hear some more stuff. Pull up a disc that we can just listen to. Let's hear the speech sound pack, because that's what this is all about, and it's a miraculous thing, and I want to hear it. Pull up your favorite demo that really shows off some cool speech sound pack capabilities.
That blood demo is really neat. It does look slightly different on a CoCo 3 versus a CoCo 2. But otherwise, it seems to operate the same.
I unfortunately don't have the blood demo ready. Where would I find it?
That was on the SSC PRG disk image.
Is that on Color Computer Archive?
Oh no, actually, I thought I got it from you. Actually,
oh really?
I thought it was. It probably might be on the. I can look on the archive as well.
I could probably drag it into Skype chat too.
Yeah,
I have it.
It's really neat. No, look under SSC. Just put that, and let's see if we see that disk image. Otherwise, I might be able to. Nope, doesn't show it.
While you're looking, I'm gonna look under Skype chat because I have it. I just ran it recently. I'm just wondering too if it's sscprg.dsk. I'm dragging it into Skype chat right now.
Yeah, try that one. There's actually a couple programs on there. They're basic, and it might be the video mode that it runs under, why it looks slightly different on a Color Computer 3.
Well, because it's using artifact colors, so that would not show up in RGB mode on a CoCo 3.
And it also only uses 3/4 of the screen on the CoCo 3. It's kind of interesting.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That is interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if it's using a certain graphics mode. I'm not exactly sure.
Your Skype is not up to date. It's like that's an old text chat in there from Rick Adams.
You're right.
Interesting. Oh, yeah. Which, by the way, when we talk about your projects, you mentioned that you still have some of the Color Computer program pack reproductions. Are they still available?
Oh yeah, the boxes that I created. I did a run of reproduction program pack boxes, and and yes, I have thousands and thousands to sell.
Oh wow!
Well, I have less. I have more than 1,000, less than 2,000 to sell, and
wow.
But they don't take up much space when they're flat. So
yeah.
If anybody needs boxes, please give me an email.
Color Computer boxes, yeah, cool. Yeah, I've still never assembled mine that I bought from, not this year, but last year's CoCo Fest. So it hasn't been a super high priority. I'd look forward to. Do you have a video somewhere of showing how to assemble the boxes? I think you might have done that one time.
Yes, I do. That's on my YouTube page.
Yes, we'll link to that too.
For those looking for it, if you go to the Tandy Color Computer Archive, if you look under Speech Sound Cartridge Sample Programs Tandy, that disk image is in the zip.
Yeah, Travis Pope just joined us here. Hello, Travis. How are you? On the Color Computer Archive, I believe the file you're looking for is Speech-Sound Cartridge Sample Programs Tandy zip. There we go. Tandy zip.
And there's 2 zip files out there. One has ssc.dsk, and then the other has the sscprg.dsk.
Okay, that's the SSC that he just found.
Yeah, you want the PRG version. So
It's the second one. Travis says it's the second one.
Yes, correct.
Disk music.
Same
Yeah.
name, but when it comes down, like in Windows, it'll add a 1 to the archive because it's the same name file, but then you'll see it's actually got a different disk image in it.
And that's the one that's got the organ you can play on your keyboard and everything else too?
I know about the blood one. I don't know about the other.
Okay.
Actually, I got a question for you, Tim. I'm actually trying to set up the MAME on my Mac, and I'm trying to use the slot colon MP multi colon S slot 3 SSC, and it's reporting that SSC is missing. Is there some sort of ROM image that I need?
Yes,
Yeah.
there is.
Yeah.
He put that in Facebook. He put it in Facebook. I put it in the text chat. I'll find it and I'll drag it into Skype chat for you too, Bill.
Okay, no problem. I kind of figured.
Yeah.
I was just wanting to know where to find it.
Yep. Let me find that for you right now. It is called. Why am I not seeing it? It's called CoCo_SSC.zip. Okay. All right.
So I got the blood demo.
He's
I just
got
dragged
it.
it in.
Yeah, he's got it here.
Okay, so you want to hit talking?
Sure.
The nice thing is this always comes up correct.
Right, and MAME it does.
Well, it's certainly
Human blood plays a very big role in your daily life.
so this must be an educational title.
Yes.
Yes.
It is actually made up of millions and millions of individual live cells.
Now notice how it's full screen here. On a
Uh-huh.
CoCo 3, it starts to change a little bit.
Powered fluid called plasma
Plasma.
consists of water, proteins, sugar, salts, and other substances.
This is like Mark Hawkins in a box.
Floating in the plasma are millions of red blood cells.
This is really cool. Yeah.
I'm trying to find the volume.
Volume up, minus and equals.
Is it?
Yeah.
The red
Wait,
blood
I'm
also
hearing.
known as red corpuscles.
Yeah, we can hear it fine. It's good.
There's
Okay,
an
good.
option for slider controls too in that MAME UI, and I think there's a volume control under slider controls as well.
Oh, yeah.
From the hemoglobin in each cell which carries oxygen.
Master volume. There you go.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Okay. That's cool. What else is on that disc? Let's look at another one. That's cool. Heart.
You want to try
What's
heart?
H and heart and H and spell?
I haven't tried
that's-
the others.
This is probably going to be some type of spelling program. Like the speak and spell, right?
Maybe. Heart.
Hear it and spell it. So the CoCo's going to say the word and we have to spell it.
Each verbal. Copyright 1986.
It didn't even give you the option of not doing
Yeah.
speech.
I want this thing to say by your command. It sounds like a Cylon.
Try this one. How would you spell alcohol? Alcohol.
What a horrible word to choose.
What did he say? Alcohol? Alcohol?
Alcohol.
Oh, alcohol. Yeah. See, they're
H. No, not H.
ACO.
O.
H.
H.
O.
O. L. There you
yeah.
go.
Some of the pronunciations are kind of bad. Like Tim Lindner's was Lindner. Tim Lindner.
Yeah, it does not do my name very good.
I had to deal with this in the reverse, not for speech output, but for speech input. In the late 90s, I worked with companies that were doing voice and speech recognition. So I became familiar with phonemes and speech tuning and things like that, using a couple of different engines that it was interesting how you had to sometimes spell things incorrectly to get them to sound correctly, you know?
Yeah.
Lindner.
Oh, no. Not
Lindner.
So what would be the phonetic version?
Lindner.
I would do this.
Yep.
Lindner.
Lindner.
Always trying to trick the device.
Yeah. That's cool. It's very cool. And it sounds great. So here's a dumb question. How does I know you've emulated it. Okay, but what does the real computer doing to generate these sounds now? Is everything, because you're basically emulating a synthesizer. Is the software doing all the motions of the synthesizer, or are there any like digital waveform samples that shortcut some of the synthesized sounds and things like that?
No, the details of the speech narrator are actually really fascinating. What they did is back in the 50s, a group of scientists got together and analyzed the human vocal tract, and they broke it down into its minimum, the least amount that would describe it in its entirety. And you start off with a noise generator, which are your vocal cords, and you can stretch them to turn up the pitch, and you can let them loose to turn down the pitch. But then you have 12 more sections in your vocal tract that can adjust the way that the sound comes through your throat and mouth. You can make your mouth wide. You can tighten up your lips, and all these things change the way the sound comes out from your vocal cords. And they got it down to 12 different variables, and they modeled them mathematically. Whereas if you change the coefficients of these formulas over time in the same way that your body does, you get something that sounds like speech.
Okay.
And so the program that's running inside the speech narrator is adjusting these 12 variables over time to make the noise generator that it contains sound like speech.
And so the emulated version is still carrying out the same process that the hardware version did? There's no like digitized versions of the different phonemes or anything like that?
In the emulation community, that's called high-level emulation, and there's no high-level emulation going on. It's all very low-level.
Okay. Because I think I remember hearing on one of the Trash Talk podcasts one time that they had emulated one of the synthesizers for one of the older TRS-80 systems, but they actually had to do samplings of the different sounds to get the emulation to work properly. But, my memory's not what it used to be.
One of the things they did well, if I could just one little anecdote, the speech narrator chip that is in this device can be made to sound like other people. The exact same chip is used in the IntelliVoice for the Intellivision.
Okay.
And they would record people and mimic their intonations as accurately as they could. And so there are some Intellivision games that have people with Southern accents.
Oh, neat. And so you can tweak the way the sound is being produced? Yes.
The chip that's in the Speech Sound Pack has a ROM in it that's called AL2, American Language 2. And it was designed to be very middle of the road American accent.
Okay. But you could give it a southern drawl if you wanted to, a southern drawl.
Yep.
That's neat. Yeah, I've got. Because I'm a big fan of this. I had the original Speech Sound Pack when it came out. I have a couple of them. I've got the book. I can't wait to reread the book too, because I think I do remember changing the pitch of the voice and things like that too, like a higher pitch voice and stuff. I think my biggest regret is that not enough games really took advantage of the music and sound of this. There were dozens of games that would support the Speech Sound Pack, but they mostly just added speech to the game, which isn't terrible, but I would love to have heard more music being made and
Yeah,
more sound effects being made.
My favorite is Gauntlet, or as they called it, Gantlet.
Gantlet.
Because of course the original arcade game had speech, very
Right.
quality speech, and so it was nice addition for it to also speak things in the port.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so that's the whole thing now. Now you want to like revisit all these games in MAME and experience them on a whole other level, you know. I got a whole bunch of more videos to make. Just look forward to lots of speech sound pack videos coming to YouTube and a YouTube video near you soon, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait. I'm going to be like a kid in a candy store going through all this stuff. It is very cool. Yeah, I want to thank you, Tim, for this project and everybody who worked on it and bringing it to us.
Sure.
Yeah. Does anybody else in the call right now or watching have any questions for Tim about this project and about the speech sound card and emulation and MAME and things like that? Do we have anybody out there who's got some unanswered questions that you'd like to?
Or any of the other projects I've worked on?
Lots of projects, yes.
Actually, Tim, I'm interested in there's that project you had. I was looking at your site, something about disk exploring.
Okay.
One of the things, and I don't think it's related, but one of the things that I would like to see is a nice interface, maybe a point-and-click GUI type interface for managing disk files, similar to what the old emulator that Jeff Vavasauer wrote. Remember, it was text-based, but it was very easy to grab files and drag and drop them rather than command lines and scripts to build disk images.
Yes.
And with the different formats of disk images that we're talking about, it would be great to see a GUI application, maybe Java, where it can run on multiple platforms, or something else where you could do that. You could build floppy disk images very easily, maybe expand that into hard drive images at some point. I don't know, but that was a project that I've been reading up on your site, and I thought, well, I don't know if that could be adapted into that, because you can explore blocks on an image with that program that you have. So I thought it was pretty neat.
Yeah, this is something I've been very interested in. The idea of looking at images of, from the foundation of what creates them, and have some sort of user interface where it shows you all the levels in between. And Steve, can people see my screen right now?
Yeah, I see it. I'm looking at it. Yeah, print hello world, go to 10. Yeah.
Very cool.
So what you see here is on the left-hand side, you see a disk image loaded in, and then it prints out the directory that is on the disk, and you click on one of the entries in the directory, and you're able to see both the hex of the file that's actually written on disk, and then in another view, it shows you the detokenized version. And
that's amazing.
That's just a little sample of something that I was trying to put together to experiment of interesting ways of verifying that disks are actually good. Disk images are actually good.
Oh, neat. Just want to switch gears here for 1 second. Curtis Boyle just put in a question in chat. He says, "Does Tim have sample code for using the DICOM light phaser, so new games could be written for it?"
Oh, that was another thing. Somehow I got a hold of that when I was a kid, and man, I love that thing. And eventually I successfully reverse engineered it, but I have never written any software for it. I added the code to MAME so that you could play those games in MAME, the light gun games. But I've never actually written anything for it. So no, I don't have it. In fact, if you start up the CoCo 3 emulator, you'll see up in the corner this glowing little blue thing.
Yeah, that's the light gun pointer, like from the arcade stuff too.
Yeah, that's the light gun pointer going, "I'm here, I'm available. Why don't you start me up a game?"
Wow. So that's just built in.
Yeah, it's always available.
That's, man, the things that we have that we don't even realize that we have. That's amazing. Diary.
Yeah,
Is that
it's a misspelling
Diary?
of Franken Diary,
Yeah.
a diary
Yeah.
of all my
Yeah.
things that I
Yeah. Frankendiary. Yeah.
yeah, Franken Diary is how you pronounce it.
Frankendiary. Okay, I have to fix my website now because I spelled diary correctly. I gotta go back.
My boss at
Frankendiary.
work and I have a long running joke of how I misspell things continually.
Okay. That is absolutely amazing.
Hey,
Man.
there's one thing I wanted to correct from your program yesterday.
Okay.
I'm going to bring that up now. Barry Nelson mentioned that he didn't think that MAME supported ROM-banked cartridges.
Okay.
And I want to say that's untrue, that it does support the Predators out there and the other ones, the RoboCop.
Okay.
And in fact, the cartridge support that I did for John Linville in his Games Master cartridge, the one with the audio chip,
Yeah.
it uses the same technique, so it supports his banking as well.
Okay. Okay. And I think I mentioned that towards the end because I remember hearing that somewhere.
Oh.
I think John actually said it on CoCo Crew number 24 because John's tech segment was about making a cartridge and what are the obstacles to making a cartridge, and I think he had mentioned that his thing is now available via emulation. So now that's good to know. That's definitely good to know. And so, I'm definitely a big fan of wanting to see more games on cartridge, just more games, more software in general for the CoCo. And I think, and again, I'm not trying to pick a side and say what emulator is best, but since we're talking about MAME right now, and there are things that MAME does for us, like the debugger and the ability to now support speech sound pack, and if it can support bank switching and all the features that we're talking about putting into new cartridges, we have the development environment to test developing CoCo cartridges and not needing the actual hardware, is what it's sounding like to me. Which is exciting, which is definitely exciting. And then we even have the reasonably priced Canadian labor to actually assemble these cartridges once we get to that point. So good stuff. So MAME will. So now the fact that you made emulation for John Linville's thing, is that a special thing you made just for him? That's we call it on a fork or something. It's not part of the main release of MAME.
No, it was submitted to the main repo, and it's part of the program.
So is it just an extra file you'd have to drop into your ROMs directory to support it, or is it just natively supported?
That's actually an interesting idea, or an interesting question. It is a slot device, so it goes here under Games Master cartridge.
Okay, so we need a zip file for that too.
And then what you do is you put the GMC under the slot device to turn on the hardware. And then you use the cart command to load the ROM that was supplied to me. So it's not part of the ROM set information. The ROM sets, of course, are what go into the ROMs folder and are sort of low-level ROMs. This is how you would specify it on the command line. But I don't have that here with me to.
Yeah.
So Tim, the version that I just compiled the other day out of Git, would that support already be in there? We just don't have the ROM for it?
Right. It is in there.
Okay.
So, yes.
Okay.
God, I'd really like to demo that, actually. Do we have a few minutes for me to poke around and...
Sure. Everybody go grab a smoke, take a potty break, get a sandwich, grab a cold beer.
I would love to see it. Thanks, Tim. That's great of you.
Yeah. Yeah. That would be cool.
Okay, I'm on it.
Tim is on it. All right, let the questions roll. Everybody's got a question. This is also getting me wanting to fast track learning how to do assembly now too, because it's like, dude, you have so many windows into the machine, you have so much visibility on what's going on. Richard Lorbieski says, I'm busy compiling MAME right now. So-
Well, I hope he's using the sources line to make it go fast.
yeah.
Okay, I'm just stopping to share my screen for a moment.
That's fine. There's Nick. Good eye, Nick.
Good day, everyone. Yeah, it's a shame we can't reprogram the ROM in the sound and speech cartridge.
What kind of changes would you want to make?
Well, you hear from, I haven't tried it myself, but there's been people who have tried to program the cartridge, and they say how awkward it is to actually use it in their machine language games. I'm talking more about the actual sound chip itself, not so much the robotic speech.
Oh, at the beginning of this conversation, I talked how I thought that was unfair to the device. I think it has some modes to it has a direct access mode to the this programmable sound generator that gives you very low latency control over the chip.
Oh, really? I'll have to read up on that, because that was the impression I got from people. So you can write directly to the register in real time, effectively?
Yes, yes, you can. There's a very minimal delay. It's just a few instructions on the microcontroller to push the data, to grab the data from the CoCo side and push it out through the PSG side.
Oh, okay. All right, that changes things.
Yeah, we're learning a lot today.
It's called the AF mode.
Now, is that documented anywhere, how to enable that mode and take advantage of it?
Yep, it's in the manual.
In the original Speech Sound Pack manual?
Yeah, it's not the best manual in the world, but it is in there.
Okay.
Trying to do.
Sorry.
I'm sorry too. Go ahead.
I was just wondering, I have got a sound and speech pack, but I've never used it because, well, it was always hard to program and everything. But does it have a mode whereby you can store a set of sound effects instructions into its memory and then make it play those instructions just by sending some sort of a signal to the chip?
Yes, it does. There are modes where you can load up its memory with sequences of sounds, and then it has 8 different memory banks that you could use. They're a bit on the small side, and then they have one instruction commands that you can send that will trigger the entire sound.
Okay. I'll definitely have to look into that.
I think what I'll do, because I'm working on programming in BASIC, and I'm going to probably be switching my programming over to the MAME environment, and now MAME supports Speech Sound Pack, I'll at least do some basic implementations of MAME, because I've got the book, and I believe we've got a PDF of the book too. And I do recall when I had my original one, I did used to load things into sound buffers and pull them that way. What I had actually done too is I had used some of the speech stuff to simulate like bass drum and cymbal sounds, because you could do like a BM and it'd be like boom, boom. You could do like a CH and get a ch, ch. So I actually had created like a little rhythm section with boom, ch, boom, ch, boom, ch, using the voice channel, and use that as like just a background loop of some stuff I was doing in some games I made back in the day. It's been so long I don't remember it, but now that I have access to do it and not needing a multi-pack interface to do it, I think I'll include this in my Programming in Basic series, is how to add speech to the game as well, speech and sound. So you have, I think it was 3 voice channels and a sound channel, and the sound channel is kind of like a lot of white noise stuff, so you got like a lot of the staticky sounds and explosion sounds and stuff. And then you had a voice channel, so technically that's 3 or 4 or 5 channels of sound you could pull out of this thing.
I'm nearly there with my demo.
Not a problem. Not a problem. Worth waiting for. Yeah, it's just amazing how much we continue to learn, you know? It's just like, you know, and it's also just, and I think it's just human nature with the online social media and stuff, you know. Once something is said, it almost becomes gospel. So I have heard that many times, that it's very difficult to program for. And being a non-assembly language programmer, non-hardware electronics guy, I'm trusting the sources, and I believe they believe it to be true too. But now we're hearing, well, it's really not that hard to program for. So that's new information that we're hearing right now.
Well, that's exactly what I have. I heard that it was very hard to program, and you know, it's very slow and high latency and all that. And I figured that's why it wasn't being used so much. But yeah, now that you've mentioned about the buffers and all that, that may actually make a few things easier than even a normal chip.
Right.
Because the fact that you can program a sound effect complete and store it in memory, you don't have to keep coming back within your program to send that data individually. You can just say, okay, play sound 1 effectively, and then the onboard microcontroller will then send the instructions one by one to the sound chip. That does save a bit of time on the programmer's end. But, yeah.
I think the only unfortunate thing is it doesn't support, like, you know, digital stuff too. If you could send some actual samples to it.
Well, you can. I've been looking at a lot of the music that other people have created on their on the ZX Spectrums and Amstrads, and the way they extend the abilities of the chip is to not use the built-in functions of the chip, things like the ADSR, the envelope controls and all that, because they are a bit limited. So what they do is they bypass that and just send data directly to the sound chip, and it can therefore do samples and whatever. But it does mean more. It's more CPU intensive, just like sending data to DAC.
Right.
But it's sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
Yeah, so it's essentially like a 4-bit DAC, or it can be used as a 4-bit DAC.
That's impressive. Travis Pope just put a message in chat. He says, I just dug up some old correspondence with Tim from 2005 asking questions about MAME and MES. I was surprised the community was still alive and kicking even then. It's hard to believe it's even more vibrant now.
So, can you see my screen?
Yeah, I can see it. Is this the cartridge that John had at CoCo Fest with the music playing?
This is the cartridge that John had at CoCo Fest. You can see that I'm setting the Games Master cartridge to be plugged into the expansion port, no multipack. And the cart is specified as the ROM that he sent me privately. He hasn't made this available.
Sure. I remember listening to this. It was great. Oh, man. Yeah.
So this is his software pushing the registers on his programmable sound generator. And it's as simple as that if you want to test your own programs that you write toward the same hardware.
This is awesome. I freaking love music, man. I've always loved this cheesy 8-bit computer music. I loved it when it's new. I love it now. I could never get tired of listening to this.
Yep.
Yeah, and I know this is supposed to be Tubular Bells, but when I heard it at CoCo Fest, the first thing I heard was The Exorcist. The theme from The Exorcist.
Is it the same thing?
Yeah, I don't know, but it sounds a lot like Linda Blair to me.
Yeah, this is a self-running demo that doesn't give you much.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of good stuff in here.
I'll just stop it now. So anyway, that was something I added to MAME a few weeks ago, and it did make it into the newest release.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. That's great. So I believe he mentioned that in his tech segment on the podcast, and I know John is pushing for cartridges, and or just let them be pushing, but just advocating the use of them. And they're for every and John Lauer says I hear Halloween, right? The movie Halloween, right? So for every reason you could come up with, well, there's reasons why we shouldn't do a cartridge. I think there's an equal amount of pros and cons to this, and at the end of the day, it's going to be up to the developer to support it. But the fact that we can now use MAME as an environment to develop and test this new sound hardware is good. It's good. I mean, it's something that, I don't know anything about music, and I haven't even started learning assembly yet. But if I was going to do anything, any of my projects, I would just want to take advantage of as much as I could. Why not take advantage of a cartridge and sound and everything else for something new for the CoCo?
Well, actually, the sound and speech cartridge doesn't actually promote ROM cartridge games. It actually promotes disc-based games. In order to talk to the sound and speech cartridge, how are you going to do that with the ROM cartridge game?
No, but John Linville's Super Game cartridge that we just heard.
Yeah, I'm talking about the sound and speech cartridge.
Yeah. Now, sound and speech cartridge is still a great thing to have, and then maybe we can get some people to promote, to develop for that since it's available.
Well, I have.
But you kind of have to ask yourself now, if you're going to develop anything, where's the time best spent? Does it make sense to develop for the speech sound cartridge that is already old, and even though now we can still do an emulation, what is it really promoting or benefiting? Or does it make sense to develop sound for new sound hardware that is physically available that can turn into retail sales? I can sell a new game on a new cartridge with this new sound chip, not new sound chip, but new implementation of this. I would think that it would make more sense to really focus on developing for the new sound, because that's something we can market and produce and provide and stuff. But we have access to everything now. With MAME, we can access the old sound and the new sound. So it's up to the creative geniuses now and what they're going to do with all this access, because it's here.
And
it's all here.
And it can move forward to other emulators and other FPGAs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So you mentioned, so we asked a question about the ROM chip and that special controller. So that is proprietary, but technically you have the code for it now. Could it be cloned, or could it, like you said, could it be ported to the FPGA? So a new CoCo 3 Nano or something could have the speech sound pack built into it.
Well, if I were to port this to the FPGA, I would do it in a high-level manner where I took the instructions that the speech sound pack knew how to do, and I would write my own implementation in the FPGA. For instance, there's a command that says take the next 24 bytes and put it into a buffer. And of course, that's already written with the microcontroller. But if you wanted to push that to the FPGA, you would just intercept the command and do it in its own way, in an FPGA way.
Okay.
It's not a super complicated device, and it can be emulated in a high-level fashion so that you don't have to create a brand new CPU core to take care of all of the functions that it does.
Okay.
Because of course with FPGA you have space concerns. You can only have so many CPU cores in an FPGA chip.
Okay.
The thing that interests me is the fact that there's probably more sound and speech cartridges out there in the wild, and now with the addition of the sound and speech cartridge support in MAME, there's actually more. It makes more sense to create software to support it now. Whereas all these other new cartridges, well, you've got to effectively, there are no users, no people out there who actually have them yet.
Yeah, that's why John's really focusing on cartridges with ROMs.
Yeah.
So that the hardware it has something to run on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think what we have right now is we have options. We've got a lot of options, and my preference, and it's all preference really. It's preference on the developer. It's preference on the consumer. But my preference would be to lean towards newer stuff. So what am I going to be wanting to look forward to buy and have and hold? I'm going to want to see new games on new cartridges with the new sound chip. That would be my preference. If anybody develops a new game for the Speech Sound Pack and I can run it now in emulation, I'm going to certainly want to have that and play that too. But what if I could just wish and my wishes come true? What would I wish for first? I would wish for new stuff on a cartridge with the new sound chip. Type something to say. Nick, stop.
Stop bacon us 9.
Bashing.
But it's so much fun.
You heard it straight from the mouth. The CoCo doesn't want you to bash OS 9 anymore.
Stop bashing.
That's your CoCo. My CoCo doesn't want to see it.
It makes for great late nights of Skyping, just bashing OS 9. Just a defenseless operating system that has only tried to help the world. The poor defenseless operating system. Oh man, this has been great. All right, have we beat it to death?
Yeah, I think so.
Have we beat it to death? The OS 9, no, we got the OS 9 beatings will never end.
I've only just started.
Oh man, Tim Lindner, I can't thank you enough for everything that you have done and continue to do for us, man.
I need to learn how to type.
Yes, you do. And speaking of which, your speech sound pack segment that you created for the CoCo Crew podcast, probably one of my favorite segments to listen to.
Oh, thank you.
You made it interactive and you had a conversation with the speech sound pack. You gave it humor, you gave it a personality, and it's exactly what that segment needed, because if you're going to be talking about something that makes sound, you got to hear what it's making. You can't just, like yesterday we talked about this on our CoCo Talk, but it wasn't as effective as being able to play the sounds. And so it's one thing to talk about something that makes sound. It's another thing to hear the sounds that it makes. And so that was a great segment. I really enjoyed that.
I had so much fun putting that together, and I sort of surprised the guys on the CoCo Crew podcast that, I only showed it to them when it was all done. But I was very grateful that they took it and used it in their next episode. It was a lot of fun.
It was good. It's good times. All right, so I guess we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you so much, Tim. I have a link to your blog in this video. I'll also look up your YouTube channel. I'll put a link to that in this thing too. So if anybody wants to look up some of Tim's videos on other things he's done, especially like on how to assemble the program pack. Program pack box, the cardboard box for the program pack, that's on there too. That'll be great. Well, I've really enjoyed this. I'm really looking forward to, even in my own small way, taking advantage of what we can do with it's just CLS, it's not print CLS. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what we can do with Speech Sound Pack. I'm really looking forward to that, because I'm programming in BASIC, so I'm going to start programming for the Speech Sound Pack in BASIC when I get to that point too, and just add, as I work on my games and work on projects, I'll just add little spices to it with some sound accents and stuff. Yes, thank you so much, and thanks for the seizure right now. I'm really enjoying having this.
And thanks, Tim. You've given me something now to look forward to. I've just unpacked my sound and speech pack, which I've had for years and never used. So I'll be downloading the manual, giving it a good look over the possibility maybe supporting it since I have it.
There you go.
I also want to mention that I took the time to retypeset the manual, so it's not a scanned manual. It's hand typeset, just like the original was.
So what manual have you got a manual on your website, or should I get it off the CoCo archive, or?
They're the same manual.
Okay.
Good, yeah. So what's on the Color Computer Archive now? Okay, perfect. So
I'll be exploring that now. It gives me something to do.
Yeah, lets you copy and paste the programs, lets you search the text. It's really nice.
Oh man, that is awesome. Tim, you are a freaking superhero, dude. Thank you.
You're quite welcome. This was a lot of fun.
It was. And thank you for doing it. All right, everybody who is here watching, thank you for watching. Certainly appreciate it. John Laurie was here. Curtis Boyle was here. Travis Pope was here. Richard Lorbieski was here. Ron Klein was here. Fedor was here. Nick Marentes was here. Who else? I was here. Grant Leedy was here. All right. And so lots of people were here. And I want to thank everybody who watched. I want to thank everybody who was part of the discussion. And especially want to thank Tim Lindner for everything he's done for us. And I'm sure will continue to do. So we're going to sign off and just want to say have a great CoCo day. And may the Speech Sound Pack be with you. Take care, everybody. And bye-bye now.
Okay.